I want to read you a portion of Psalm 22, verse 1. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me and from the words of my groaning? There are many kids that have separation anxiety. They can't stand being away from their parents for more than an hour. You wouldn't dare leave them with a babysitter, nor could you even put them in Sunday school so you can enjoy the service. Some kids are just prone to have this problem. However, I was the type where I actually preferred being alone, and I was very independent. But regardless, when you're alone long enough, you feel lonely. In fact, my whole life I falsely believed that all I ever really wanted was to be alone. Don't bother me. I'm better off by myself. Just leave me to my artwork. I would hide in my room all day and play with my Legos and write really dark poems. But being around other people was just the one thing that I was always looking for. It's the one thing that I both hated and desperately needed at the same time. When I thought I was enjoying myself and not talking to anybody, being by myself, I was really feeling hopeless and longing for a relationship with somebody. I just wanted somebody to love me. Regardless if you're like me, from birth, we all innately have a certain degree of separation anxiety. We all long for being loved and cared about and noticed. We long to have company. We long to have somebody to be with us, not leave us or desert us. Not to mention, we oftentimes forget where this comes from. Because not only do we get lonely, our loneliness stems from one man. That man is Adam. Adam sinned and he became separated from God. Adam would then become the father of many generations over many descendants who felt this same separation. Before we were believers, our loneliness was understandable. No man, woman, material possession or status could fill the empty hole of separation that we felt inside. We were trying to fill the gap with so many other things, but none of them would aptly fill that hole. We were homesick. We were homeless. We were desperately longing for somebody to love us, somebody to care. And then Jesus filled that hole. But even so, with our sinful nature still remaining as Christians, there still remains a degree of separation. Many times when we're suffering, we feel like God's left us. We feel like we can't hear from God anymore. We feel like we don't feel his presence anymore. He's abandoned us. He doesn't care about us anymore. Perhaps we start to wonder if he ever cared at all. Maybe he cares more about the neighbors. They seem to be having a great life. Maybe we're not as important as other people. Maybe we're going to be suffering like this forever. This feeling drives a stake right through the softest part of our heart. Not only do we feel like God has left us, but we start to think that maybe he was never really there to begin with. We start to doubt. We start to worry. We start to feel alone in our misery. But then also we start to remember the deep feeling of emptiness that we had before we were Christians. We start to remember the horror it was not to have anybody who loved us and cared for us in our life. We start to remember the emptiness, the dread, the longing for something to fill that hole. Remember the years and years we spent trying to fill it with other things. But then we remember the day, that one day, that hole was filled and that separation was removed. Remember the day that God found us. Remember the day that God reminds us that as we were separated from God, so was Jesus. Jesus and the Father were one, but were separated for a time so that salvation could be brought to many. Can you imagine what it must have felt like for Jesus to have been separated from his Father? Can we comprehend that? Though we were separate, through Jesus we were made close. Could it be that God would allow sufferings to come our way so that we can feel the same way that Jesus felt? Could it be that when we're suffering, what seems like separation could actually be the closest we've ever been? Could it be that when we're suffering, we get to experience a little taste of how much God was longing to be close to us for 4,000 years after Adam sinned? Could it be that God experienced the very same separation anxiety that we're feeling now? When we're searching for him and longing for him because it seems like he's left, how much are we reminded of how long he's been searching for us? When it feels like he's far away, are we reminded of how much we've been brought near? Ephesians chapter 2 verse 13 says, "But now in Christ Jesus, you who were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ." How close do you feel to God right now? Do you feel like he's far away? If so, how hard are you looking for him? How desperate are you to find him? Jesus came all the way to find you when you're separate. How far are you willing to go to meet him? When you're suffering, when you're feeling pain, when you're feeling hopeless, you feel like nobody cares. Just be reminded that not only did Jesus feel the same separation that you're feeling now, but there will also be one day where there'll be no more separation forever.